everyone, I'm Rebecca and welcome back to my channel. Today I am going to be continuing on the Gilded Age bodice that I've been working on for a few weeks now. I'm hoping maybe there's a chance that I can actually finish it this week. We'll see. But I'm picking up with this project just a little bit after where I left off in the last video. So if you have not seen the other videos on this project so far, I will link those down below in the description in a playlist. But the reason why I'm saying just a little bit is because I had told you at the end of that last video that I was going to do all of the bodice hems, and then we were going to start on working on, I think, the back drape today. I haven't done all of the bodice hem because the front part of the bodice, like where it's much longer, that's actually proving to be a more complicated hem than I had anticipated. So I wanted to make sure that I show you what I'm doing. The back of the bodice is already hemmed. I had shown you last week that I had already even put that bias tape on and pinned it in place. So that's how that was hemmed, was with a strip of bias tape. The front of the bodice I had been intending to just turn up twice and then hem that way, but it's not going to work that way. So let me show you what we are doing instead and why turning it up twice is not going to work. So this is the front shape of the bodice. So here we are right here. This is the center where the buttons are. And then over here we have the pleats. And it turns out that to have it be a nice kind of scooped up shape like this, because of all of the pleats over here, the shape of this actually winds up being scooped up to here, but then dropping back down because this side is being pulled up by the pleats. So to get it to look like an even curve, the actual hem is all sorts of crazy. And because of this, where I was originally going to just turn it up twice, it just wouldn't work because it's a curve. It's too curved to be able to turn it up twice because this section right here, this edge, is a lot smaller than right here, which is the fold. So this line is the fold where it needs to go up, and then this is the edge that I was going to turn. So I've already cut off a fair bit down here because originally this was straight across and now obviously it's not. And so now what I'm going to be doing is I'm going to be applying bias tape again, and I am going to make sure that the stitch line of the bias tape is right here on this drawn in line, and then that will get turned up because bias tape is able to curve. So there's going to be a bunch of this that's actually cut off because I really only need about like 3/8 of an inch for a bias tape hem, if that, maybe even like a quarter. But I'm going to put on the bias tape first and then cut off the excess, and then I will fold the bias tape up with about 1/8 of an inch folded in the inside so that we don't see any bias tape on the outside. So that's what I'm starting with. I will show you what that looks like when it's done. This is what it looks like with it all nicely hemmed. Hi, Lion. And that is what it looks like overall. So now that that hem is done, I am going to work on the back drape because I feel like the bodice skirt combo is going to be less cumbersome with the back drape than it will be if I start adding the tassels. So tassels are going to go on almost last. Tassels, then bows, then project is done. So I'm going to do the back drape. I talked about this a whole lot in my last video, but basically I figured out that it really just needs to be the one big piece, but then with the wedge taken out of it. So of course I have everything pinned right now, which sucks because I never did the hem. And I'm going to do the hem very much like I did the hem on the waterfall-y part of the back drape, the center part that I did last week. And that means I'm gonna put right sides together and just sew this seam. Right now we've just got two raw edges like stacked up against each other there. I'm just gonna do right sides together and sew that and then turn it right sides out. And that way I don't actually have to do an actual hem, it will just be finished. So that is number one, but of course I have to undo things like the pleats and stuff to do that, and the wedge probably too. So I'm gonna mark the wedge, mark the pleats, do the hem, and then I am going to redo the pleats on this side, actually do the pleats on this side that I haven't done, and sew the wedge in place. Once that's done, I mean, this just has to get attached to the other sides. And I'm not finishing the edges or anything over here where the pleats are. It is the selvage edge, so it doesn't need to be serged or anything like that. And this is just, once it's all pleated up to the right length. This is just going to go right sides together to the front of the bodice. And then that seam will be like encased basically in there and no one will see it and it will be great. So got a little bit of work to do on here, but I'm hoping that it'll go together pretty quickly. So let's get started. It's attached. Ta-da! This is what it looks like on the side. I haven't pressed this or anything yet, so this seam probably should get pressed because actually I didn't even press the pleats on this side. I just pinned them. So yeah, that'll need a little bit of a press right in there, and same with over here on the other side. Like that. I did not try to match the pleats from one side to the other on both front and back. In fact, I just kind of eyeballed them because the look in the plate is very much just kind of gathered up, but I didn't want to gather it because I didn't think that would work well. So it's just pleated, and then each one is just sewn, like this side is all pleated up, this side's all pleated up, and then they're sewn to each other. So I didn't do it to a twill tape. I don't think I'm going to need to. Like, I think that even with some weight on here, I don't think there's going to be any issue with the pleats over here not having a twill tape. This will be stitched down about like 4 inches or so right here, and same on the other side. Right now it's just pinned. And then the part that I made last time, the little waterfall bit, which is laying right there on the floor, that will go right here and come down the center. And then this will have all of the tassel trim put around the bottom all the way around front and back. So that's next, is add the tassel trim. This, by the way, is literally just tied at the moment with a bit of scrap. So I do have to figure out, probably I do have to figure out a more permanent solution. I suppose that this actually may work, like a double knot. I just did a little bow, but I guess that could actually work. The part that is inside, by the way, like that excess, I did leave it there. So it's a little bit bulky because it's this, but I don't think it's really a problem. Like, it seemed to still gather up very nicely. And if anything, it almost gives it more heft right here. So I don't mind that at all. But yeah, there she is. And oh, and there'll also be tassel trim up here. So now it's time to start tasseling instead of leaving it in a pile on the floor. The first tier of the tassels is now on. I'm honestly a little bit torn about whether I want a second tier or not. I think I do, because I do like the look down here, like where I've already done the second tier on the little fall pleats. But I worry about the weight, just so you see in the mirror that like side view. That is what's going on all the sides and everything. It's now taking up a good chunk of my room with the train out. But yeah, I think I'm gonna pin the second layer in place, just like a little bit of it in place, and see what that looks like. I'm also, I have a bigger rear end than Antoinette does, so I'm hoping that this is filled out on me, because I thought I remembered it being filled out on me. But otherwise, I may actually need to like build a bigger pad for this, because I don't want to have to do any alterations, especially now that trim is on to this, and it doesn't matter if I go for another pad, because obviously the hem length doesn't matter. It's super, super long. So yeah, everything's looking really good. This is just pinned in at the moment. I still have to attach that. And of course there will be bows everywhere too. And then the other layer of the tassels, assuming that I do go with the second layer. I think I will, because I do feel like it looks rather harsh to just have one. I think that second layer is going to fill in nicely. So, but I do really like that side view. Look at that. It's already looking so pretty. So very excited. I have pinned the trim onto the back, both up here on the bodice and then also down on the skirt, the second layer, just to see how I think about it. For one thing, it is actually slightly different than what I had on there before. If you look, I don't think it's showing up on film, but this is a brighter pink, which honestly is less like in my dress otherwise. This one is kind of a more muted, like orangey salmon type pink. So I actually like this color better. The other thing I was trying to figure out was the placement, because I pinned this side on first, and I pinned it like I did down on the tail, which you can't really see because it's buried, but I pinned it like I did down there, where basically the top one overlaps to right above the ribbon. And so you get this sort of effect. And I at first felt like it wasn't really giving me enough depth in the tassels. Like they were kind of still looking too close in length. So then on this side, I pinned it a little bit higher so that they are just barely overlapping at all. Like the top of it's right there. And that way there was a little bit more definition in here. But honestly, I don't think I like that. I think I like the overlap better. I just feel like this side looked a little better, but I still wasn't sure about the trim overall. So I went and I pinned the second row of trim down here, which I'm actually going to show you in the mirror because it looks better. So this side has the second row of trim. And the weird thing about that is that the upper row, if you pin everything flat against the fabric, then you wind up like the overlap changes, because I wanted these, the second layer, to all be centered between the first layer, but as it goes up and over, at some point it is no longer centered, it's off center. I think because of the way it falls, it doesn't really matter because like down here it's still looking a little center, but at the same time, I feel like this area here, the length is weird. I don't know, like these almost look the same length because this one's from higher up and this one, yeah. So I don't know, but I'm still thinking that I like it better than the other side. Just for context, this is what it looks like down here when there's only one row on there. And I do feel like it still looks a little sparse. So I think I'm gonna go with the 2, but I am a little bit worried about the weight that it's going to add to everything because it does add a lot of weight. I don't know. I'm still pretty torn. I went ahead and did the second row of tassels everywhere, and now what I have to do is go back and at all of the ends I have to hand sew this mess. This one is the worst because this one started to completely unravel, but basically they all tend to unravel quite a bit, so these all need to get hand sewn and hand secured down at the ends everywhere that the ends are. So there's like 8 or 10 of them, including on the little tail drape. So I'm gonna do that, and then what I'm gonna do is the part of this is the front here, but the part of this in the back where I was showing you before that it was kind of like falling and squinching over like this sort of thing where it was coming down at an angle. I think if I go ahead and put another row of stitching right here across the stitching on this row of trim, then it will prevent it from sandwiching in on itself. I was, by the way, able to get all of these to alternate like in between. That's part of the other reason why I'm going to stitch down here, because some of it involved just kind of like maneuvering and squinching a little. I was trying to not get it to like squinch the silk. In some places it kind of did still a little bit, but I'm hoping that it won't be too obvious. And yeah, mostly it was like trying to maneuver. This one is definitely narrower. Like you can see, looking at that up close, that these are narrower than these. I swear they are. And so with this one, I was trying to like kind of pull it apart a little bit, but doing it too much would wind up squinching. And then in parts, I was like trying to squinch the bottom without making it squinch the silk. So yeah, lots of maneuvering in there, but I think it gave the effect that I wanted it to. So now I've got to do a bunch of hand sewing and then do that one other stitch, and then it's onto the bows, and that's it. All right, so a couple of developments. I did sew that line in between the 2 layers, and I feel like they're hanging nicer now, like they're not crunching together, so that was really good. And then I've also decided that I think the best way, honestly, to just do this is literally to tie it. So I'll probably switch it to a double knot, but this is just that same scrap of fabric I've been using, but I serged the edges so it wouldn't fray all over. And right now it's tied in a bow, but again, I'll probably do a double knot and then just kind of like tuck the ends in and just call it. Then the other thing that I'm looking at is bow size, because now it's time for making bows. This is my stand-in bow that I've been using this whole time, and I think it's a little bit too big. This is also a flat bow. I'm gonna do it where it's like 2-sided, like a long tube, so it looks more like a ribbon bow. But I think this one is a little too big, just as little, like maybe a 1/2 inch too wide on each side of the bow, and maybe a 1/2 inch, possibly an inch too wide across this way. And then of course mine will have tails as well. And I'll have 6 of this size bow, and then I think 3 of a smaller bow, 1 with longer tails for the very front, and then 2 with shorter tails, I think, for the sleeve, or maybe it's vice versa. I have to double check. But those will be smaller bows than this one. But I think we're close. There will be 2 more down here. And let's start making some bows. So I just started to assemble one of the skirt bows, and I was really liking it at first until I put it on the dress. And part of it is I feel like the top of the bow is maybe too big for the tails, but then the other part of it is looking at the plate here, there's supposed to be 3 bows from the time it gets to the top area of tassels there to the bottom, and I feel like 3 bows will literally just take up that entire space. So I think, I mean, literally did not scale this. I just kind of made it up based on my stand-in bow, but I think that's going to be too big, so I need to get one there and one there also. So it's unfortunate because it looks cute. It looked cute until I stuck it on there. It's not sewn together or anything, like the pieces aren't sewn together. This is a bow piece and then a little loop piece and then a tail piece. And yeah, I think it's just going to be too big. So I'm going to try a smaller bow and see how that looks. So I'm really surprised that this is making such a difference, but I took out like a 1/2 inch on each side of the bow, and I feel like it really is making a big difference because the tails still seemed about right before. They're a little too wide in this one, but it's just pinned in place. But I think that is going to be the right scale. So I'll just take 1 inch off of my measurements for the width of the bow, and that'll be good. And so now I'll go make 5 others. By the way, that means that the measurements for this bow are 13 inches across on this top piece right here and 11 inches wide because of all of the various ways that it folds, which I'll show you how to do that because I realize it's been like a year, I think, since I did a bow tutorial on this channel, which was with my Cinderella videos. And this one is a little bit different because these have tails and I don't feel like I remember those having tails. Maybe I'm wrong, but yeah, this one has tails. So I will do a new bow tutorial in a moment, but measurement wise, again, 13 by 11 for that top part. The little center part here, this is a whole separate piece, and that is 4.5 by 3.5 inches. So it is 4.5 inches long, 3.5 inches across. And then the tails are 6.5 inches wide by 10.75 inches long. And those are the shapes that you need to cut to make a bow. So in other words, making bows actually takes up a lot of fabric. So just be prepared for that if you are going into some sort of project where you need a whole lot of fabric bows. This is a lot of fabric. Like you will need, I mean, for 6 of these, I haven't done the math, but I would be very, very surprised if I could cut 6 of these bows out of only 1 yard of fabric. And I'm not sure exactly how much I have. And of course I need 9 bows total. It's just that the other 3 are a little smaller. So we're gonna see how this goes, but let's go start making some bows. Okay, so let's talk about how to do these bows. We have all of our pieces cut here, and this does have a right side versus a wrong side. So to begin with, we are going to fold this hot dog style, and we're going to sew all the way along that. This part is the like bow head part, and then this is the tails, and we are going to also fold this hot dog style. And on this one, we are actually going to sew here, here, leave a gap right there, start again here, and here. And then this is the little wrap part that goes around the center of the bow. And this one we are going to also fold hot dog style, and we are going to sew along there. Now that they've all been sewn, we are going to try and press this seam right here on the big one. We're going to press that open, and we're also going to try to press as much as we can of this one open, just because it's easier once you've turned it right sides out to have this already pressed. And then we're going to turn all of these right sides out. We are going to clip these corners, by the way, too, but we're going to turn all of them right sides out. They have all now been turned right sides out, and I made sure to use a point turner to get in the corners of this one for the ties. We are now done with the ties piece, frankly, until we hand sew them all together. This one and this one, this is personal preference, but I serge over the edges of both of these. By the way, if you couldn't tell, I did center the seams on both these pieces, so that way the seams are out of the way. Now with this piece right here, with wrong sides together, I'm going to sew a seam 3/8 of an inch from the edge here. I use a 3/8 inch seam allowance for all of this, by the way. And this one, right sides together, I'm going to do the same thing. Now I've pressed these seams open, and I'm going to turn this so that it's right sides out. And then all we do is we take this piece right here, scrunch up one end, and slide it through our little ring until it gets to the center. There we go. All of that serging is covered by the ring, and we don't see any of it even from the back. You can just see like the little trails, but that's going to get hand sewn on. And now we're going to take our tails, pinch them in the center, and hand sew the tails on to the back of the bow here, and then hand sew the entire bow onto our garment. This is what it looks like when it's all stitched in place in the back, and now I can sew this to the dress. As far as figuring out the other bows, I mocked this up out of ribbon and then just like measured, once I decided I liked it, I measured the width and like the width of the ribbon here and all that sort of stuff. And so I'm going to make a little fabric ribbon the same exact size as this bow. I think I am actually also going to use this bow size for the center front right here. I may decrease the length of the tails. In fact, I'm almost certainly going to decrease the length of the tails, but otherwise the rest of this bow is going to stay the same for the front as it is for the sleeves. I've just finished putting the tail on, as in sewing it on right in there. It looks like this from the inside, so it's kind of all a mess, but this is the end of the knot. I might cut that off, and then it's been hand stitched down right here, and that makes that nice little waterfall pleat. I machine sewed the pleats first so they'd stay in place, and then I hand stitch it down. And all of the bows are on the sides and the sleeves, same with on the other side. I just have the front bow to do, but I want to do that when I put the dress on. So let's go put this dress on. So this is the first time putting it all on in quite some time, at least a few videos. And the first time since I put like the buttons and everything on. The reason that I'm putting it on right now is because I want to see where the bow is going to go on the front. I just wasn't sure. So I haven't bothered doing up all of the closures yet. Going back to when I put the buttons on, I think I told you that I was a little bit worried that it would be too large at the waist. It seems to be doing fine at the waist, so I don't think I have to move that button. One thing that isn't right though is that this is like folding, like there's excess room here, and I had actually already gone ahead and put on my very tiny bum pad under my regular bum pad that I had been having on the form this whole time, and it is still like there's just a little too much fabric here in the lacing section. And I think that because the area with the fringe, with the tassels, is so much stiffer and heavier than the center, it is just like collapsing in on the center. So I'm not sure how to fix that. I'm not sure if I'm going to fix it, to be honest. I may try to make another pad maybe and just see if a little bit of additional padding will help to round that out. I might even like build in a pad there. That might be helpful, because the other bustle that is underneath my big bustle pad, it's a very short one, so I don't think it's really helping to give volume all the way down here. But yeah, so anyway, bow, because I put these 3 fake buttons on here, and I think I'm gonna have to take one off, but I'm not sure whether this bow should hit like right here up at the top or right maybe down a little. I can't see in the monitor, so I'm gonna have to look in the mirror to figure this out. And then I just have to sew this bow on, and assuming I'm not fixing, you know, this thing, that is it. I may sew, probably will sew if I have time before the festival, a baliuse into the train of the skirt, which a baliuse is like a little ruffled piece of fabric, could be eyelet trim, etc., that will help to kind of keep the train out of the dirt. So that's what they did. Like for cleanliness, they would have a little piece of fabric in there that could just be like whipped in and then easily removed, tossed in the wash, or just replaced if it's ruined. And that would really help to protect the train. I do also have a bit of a train on my petticoat, so that helps a little bit, but I do intend to sew a baliuse inside of here, just like really roughly whip it on. But that's only going to be if I have time, because I still have to make the bonnet for this, and I have to make an evening bodice for the dance at the Victorian Festival, and that is going to be based off of my burgundy velvet dress. So I have to make a velvet evening bodice. Great. So anyway, let's figure out where to put this, and then I'll sort of wrap up today's video. So I just pinned on the bow. I decided I wanted it right at the top, so I removed the top button. By the way, I don't think I ever mentioned this, but I removed the very bottom button too, and I actually stitched the very bottom together so that the tassels would always stay in alignment with each other on both sides. So yeah, that part is stitched closed right at the bottom. But as I was pinning this bow on, it also dawned on me that I never made a dickie for this, and I had fully intended to make a neck fill-in dickie for this outfit. So As I mentioned seconds ago for you, I also am still planning to make the bonnet for this, but I have run out of time this week. So the bonnet is going to be a separate video and probably a dickie as well. I am going to try on with it this dickie. This is the one that is for my velvet gown, and if this works, I'll just wear this because that'll save me a lot of work. But if it doesn't work, then I will be making a dickie with the bonnet in that same video after the velvet bodice. So I'm gonna go ahead, sew this on, and then I will try the dickie on, button everything up, and show you what you're going to get for now as a final, because I'm actually not going to show you the final of this until Port Townsend. I'm going to do a video with like all of the outfits from Port Townsend, the Victorian Festival, etc. So you are going to see everything there. That will go for the ball gown bodice video too, just FYI. Like there won't, I mean, that one, you know, you can easily see a bodice in frame, and if you go back 2 years, you can see the rest of that outfit. But yeah, sorry that you're not getting like a big final reveal now. But hey, it's not done. I still need the bonnet, right? Okay, I'm gonna go sew this on. This is definitely not the look that I was going for with this outfit, so this little dickie chemise set is not gonna work, and I will be making another one in the bonnet video. So it's impossible to give you a full view, but I'm going to try and back up enough that you can actually see what's going on. The bow is all sewn on now. I think it looks great where it is. And I've also, I think, figured out a solution for the back bit that was folding in. I haven't actually sewn it in place yet, but basically I made this like pad that is just going to get stitched to the underside of there, because it's at the very least keeping things out. I mean, it does keep it out away from the skirt, which I don't know if I like, but I don't want to have to go in and like redo everything to try to fix it. So that's gonna work, and I'm just gonna whip stitch it in on the sides and it'll be wonderful. So anyway, this is as much of the dress as I can show you for now. I don't think you can see the train, but there is one. I am quite pleased with it. It's going to be interesting to try and walk around Port Townsend in it because of the train. It also, like, adding the tassels added quite a bit of weight to it. So it definitely, it's a bit heavy in the back. But overall, I am quite pleased with how everything is, and I'm excited to do the bonnet and the dickie and really finish out the look, which I will show you in a couple of weeks. I just have to pop in with this interesting addendum that I figured out after I filmed the outro, and that is that the skirt was kind of collapsing down in the back. Like, it wasn't being full down here. I can't even reach it, but it wasn't being full enough. So I figured, highline. So I figured, let's try this with the lobster tail bustle instead. And at first it was too big with the regular lobster tail bustle, but if I undid the strings that are tying the tops of the lobster tail bustle together, it actually flattened out significantly, made it so I really didn't need that sewn in pad. I think I do need something to stiffen the very bottom right there, but I don't need the pad, and it's giving me the shape, and it is filling out the skirts down here. So even though this is the natural form era, I'm wearing this with a partial lobster tail bustle because in the natural form era, they also had weird hoop skirt contraptions. So we're pretending that this is my weird hoop skirt contraption since I don't have one of those. And yeah, we're gonna run with this for what I'm wearing underneath instead of the pads. So if you liked this video though, please go ahead and click the thumbs up icon. And if you'd like to see more videos like this from me, please go ahead and click subscribe and the little bell icon to be notified every time I post a new video. I do post videos here on YouTube twice a week with my sewing vlogs like this out on Tuesdays and other costuming content out on Saturdays, but I post every day over on my Instagram, so please go follow me on Instagram. That's at Lady Rebecca Fashions. And if you'd like to help support all of the work that I do on this channel, I do have linked my Patreon and my Ko-fi down in the description below. I'd also like to give a special shout out to my Edwardian level patrons, Sharon, Julie, and Mirage. Thank you all so much for joining me today. Have a wonderful week, and I will see you very soon in my next video. Happy sewing!